Hey everyone, I'm Talon, and welcome back to the channel. Last video you saw me build and prime my miniature for this competition. Elim Rawn, one of Gaunt's Ghosts, and today, using just 4 colours, I'm going to finish my entry for that Suns Out, Guns Out painting challenge. Now, for my colours, I ended up with these 4. Warplock Bronze, Aqua Alchemy, Desert Yellow, and Violet Red. These colours hold a lot of promise, I think, but I still had to spend some time figuring out what I could actually do with them if I had any hope of a decent paint job. So I stuck my paints down on the wet palette, had to go experimenting with them to see if I could make the skin tones that I'd need, the leathers, browns, the wood, all the kind of necessities that I would need, because there's a lot of straps and pouches and wood on this model. Thankfully, the fact that I could use black and white paint of my choice was also very handy, because they were essential for getting those highlights and the desaturated browns that I'd need. So with that I was able to start blocking in the base colours. To start with, I mixed the red and the yellow to make a decent ruddy skin colour. 2 thin coats as always. And that went down lovely, a very good base coat. Now, with such a limited palette, every colour placement needed thought, and I really needed to think about what the main colour of this model would be. Because I like teals, turquoises, those kind of colours, I decided that the blue Aqua Alchemy would go on the cloak, hopefully drawing attention, looking good on this huge canvas that I have. To base coat it, I mix it with a bit of red and a tiny bit of black, which was a decent lavender base coat, although I will, you'll see what I do with this colour as time goes on. Then mixed red and yellow to paint in all the browns, the leather gaiters, the belt, the pouches, the shoulder pad, the wood of the gun, and then I mixed just a little bit of yellow in order to get a slightly more colourful brown and wet blend where I wanted some basic highlights. I also mixed some red and some black, and base coated his fatigues with that dark maroon. I then used a very yellow-brown, more yellow than red in this mix, to paint the fasteners on the cloak, the brooch on his shoulder, the emblem on his rifle. I mixed the blue and yellow for a green grenade, with a little bit of black to make it desaturated, and then I painted in all the metal with just plain old Warplock Bronze. Now with this, I didn't so much love my prospects, because mixing up highlights for this colour did not go well. But I figured I would improvise at the time and figure something out later. So there we go, we've got a fully base coated, although slightly desaturated model. And we can now move on to the fun part, highlighting. Normally, in between these 2 stages, I'd use a wash, but hopefully the fact that my base coat is desaturated means that the recesses will be dark enough and there'll be enough contrast. Spoiler, it worked okay in some places, not so much the others. I started off by highlighting the fatigues, essentially just mixing more and more red in that base coat colour to gradually highlight it up, and then once I reached that pure red, I added a little white for the final highlight. I tried a bit of a different approach to highlighting here than I usually do. If you look here, in this picture, I took a picture of the base coated model, or mostly black model, with a bright light above it, and tried to highlight in the corresponding lighter areas to use that as a map. And I think it looked semi-realistic, and I was quite happy with how it went. Next, I just highlighted all the black areas, mixed black and white to make a dark grey, and then mixed a slightly lighter grey for the highlights of those areas. Nothing particularly special. I highlighted his shoes with some more scratchy highlights to give a more worn effect, but it's not too visible on the finished model. Next up is skin. Now I mixed the red and the yellow for the skin colour that I did before, and added more white and a tiny bit of yellow as I highlighted up, which I thought looked okay, although eventually I did come back to this because I wasn't too happy with how it looked in general. I felt like it was just missing something, but we'll get to that later. Then we got to the big canvas, as it were, the cloak. I started with that red, blue, black mix and just added more blue as I went. Just tiny little bits more blue, highlighting up slightly smaller areas until I reached that pure aqua alchemy. It felt flat, so I glazed some violet red into the recesses, wiped off the excess with my thumb at one point, and then I carried on gradually highlighting up to that pure aqua alchemy teal turquoisey colour. This, I didn't like it. I tried to salvage it with a glazing of aqua alchemy. Truthfully, it didn't help at all. I felt a bit disappointed at this point, a bit disheartened and discouraged, as it were. It seemed a bit messy and a bit like it didn't really catch the eye. So what I did was I just took a break, so that I could get a fresh perspective. Just enough time to lose that bad feeling, you know, and then come back excited. So, I came back to the model, and then I was able to articulate my problems. I saw that the cloak was still too flat, and it was painted quite messily. And so this particular section on the back wasn't smooth, this part of the cloak went around his neck, the cowl, I guess, was just messy, and the recesses weren't vibrant enough, and across the whole thing, I thought the highlights weren't bright enough, so it didn't pop. So I mixed up thin purple with the red and the aqua alchemy, mixing together, leaning more towards the red so that it was more of a vibrant purple, and then started putting that in the recesses. I tidied everything up a bit more and added more contrast. On the back, see here, I used it to define the cloak's shape a bit more. And then, once more, I very, very gradually mixed blue into that red, making tiny, tiny highlights to highlight up very slowly and hopefully smoothly, and adding more contrast as I went. That took a while, but then what I did was I took a very thin glaze of aqua alchemy to hopefully smooth out the blends, while not dampening down the highlights, so I didn't let it settle in the recesses. And then finally, I just mixed a tiny bit of white into that aqua alchemy, and that made it really pop. This was when I finally felt a bit of relief. Well, not really relief, it was happiness. I knew that I would like this model, whether I won the competition or the challenge or not, and that motivated me to finish it. And that gave me a bit more confidence for the rest of the model. Now, next, I painted the latches and the badges with a gradually lighter yellow. I then brightened up my green to highlight the grenade. Added just a tiny bit more yellow, I believe. Then we reached the leather, so I added yellow and white to highlight the leathers and the wood, just using various different tones, to be honest. Variation that I didn't write down, so I can't really remember, but a little more red on the gaiters, a little more white on the belt pouches, a lot more white for that skull on his knife, and that helped the different leathers look distinct. And then I returned to the face, because as I mentioned before, I wasn't too happy with the skin, but the arms were okay. After a little bit of a glaze of red, this face was not, it looked flat. I remember watching a video a long time ago, I think it was by Rogue Hobbies, perhaps also by Miniac, on how to paint faces. Now, I'm not nearly as good as them, but I learnt about those colour bands across the faces, how the top of your forehead, that's going to be more white, bright and yellow because that's where the sun hits. Across your eyes and cheeks is red because that's where the blood is, and then across the chin and jaw that is going to be a bit blue. So I did that. I mixed a nice cool blue glaze for the lower face and did a red glaze across the eyes and cheekbones, and highlighted the forehead more with a slightly brighter mix to keep the regions distinct, and then just use my general skin colour highlight across all three of those to tie them in. Quite thin, so it didn't obstruct those colours that I'd glazed in, but still tied them together. Then I did some quick grey highlights on the hair, and finished with a recessed shade on the bronze. I couldn't figure out a highlight that I wanted to use. I tried a couple and they just looked terrible, so doing this was a bit of a compromise to still give myself some depth in those sections. I was pretty pleased at this point. I'd finished the model, essentially, and all I needed to do was the final stretch, the basing. I'll cover it pretty quick. A brown up to pure desert yellow paint job on the shrub. Mixed my blue with some black for a bit grey-blue rock with some splashes of desaturated desert yellow for variety, and then just went all over it with a very thin black and blue to kind of darken it a bit. Then I sponged blue-grey onto the rock, then a slightly brighter blue-grey onto the rock, and then I used that original black and aqua alchemy wash that I did just last step to shade in certain areas because it was just too bright and uniform. Finally, I sieved out some larger rocks out of the Geek Game and Scenics mix and the flock separate. I applied some PVA and put some of the big rocks around the rock that Elim is standing on, and then applied the smaller flock everywhere else. And then I painted up the helmet I wanted on the base. It's basically just bronze and then that violet red from AK with some white mixed in to get a pink. With some of that aqua alchemy desaturated on the pipes and not so desaturated on the eyes, and some black recess shading, it was done pretty easy and quick, and stuck it down with PVA glue. There we go. One finished model. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I cannot recommend enough entering a painting competition or a challenge like this, even if you think you're not good enough, because I certainly doubt I'm going to win. It's just fun. Yeah, it was just plain fun. Without further ado then, let's get some close-up shots of my mini. Genuinely had a ball with this model. I hope that you enjoyed my video. Leave a like if you did, and if you have any tips or pointers for either my painting in this video or the channel as a whole, maybe a direction you'd like to see me go, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear from you. The next video I have planned is a kit bashing video for my Red Corsairs. I enjoy kit bashing, so hopefully that will make for a good video. That might be in a little while because I'm moving house, so if you want to stick around and see it, give me a subscribe. And hopefully I will see you again.